I want to welcome a person up here that is a long-time historian about this area, about Niles, and in fact, it's his writings that I read, and I got inspired by what had happened here, and have been in love with the community and the history of what happened here ever since, and can't seem to get it out of my head for some reason. So, without further ado, I want to welcome up tonight Donald Parkhurst. Don, come on up.
It was during my time here, when I was working on my master's degree for Cal State, that I was flung this assignment by the professor to take up the subject of the motion picture industry in Niles, California. And I said, now, Dr. Horsey, you know I'd rather take something important, like the history of the slave trade, something I can sink my teeth into. He says, yes, Don, but you don't have any records of it. There was no slavery out here. I found out that once I got into the subject, there was indeed slavery here, and I was it. It was just an awful lot of work. Now, that was back about 1975, 1976. Oh, boy, that was a long time ago. And I chased this subject. And I chased it, and I ran it down until finally it caught me. And it has never let go. From that day to this, it has hung on to me, and I have wound up, one way or another, associated with Niles, with Broncho Billy, with Essanay, and the whole history of it. And it's been a delightful experience.
Don, would you like to stand? We have this great podium. I'm dying to try it out.
Let's try it.
That takes.
See if that thing works.
I'll let you.
Our sermon for today. No. I have been asked by the gentleman with me to prepare and offer to you a few spontaneous, offhand remarks.
Oh, we are going to go over. I can see that.
Allow me to draw your attention to something a little more serious than what we've done so far. I'm going to draw your attention to a woman whom no one pays much attention to. She lived and died in ignominy. She was unknown, unheralded. Her name was Hannah. I'm sure you know who she was. The mother of Charlie Chaplin. She was no comedian. But if it hadn't been for her, Charlie Chaplin would never have survived childhood, and you and I would not be here today celebrating these events. Allow me to enlighten you just a little bit on what this woman was. Now, these are 2 pages from the manuscript, which is on its way before a publisher at this time. Let's hope it works. And this will read pretty much as the entire manuscript does. So it'll be a foretaste for you of the glories yet to come. The details in the life of Charles Chaplin are very hard to pin down, so contradictory and unreliable are the sources, including his own autobiography, which was almost certainly written by a ghostwriter. But the main outline is clear enough and agreed upon all around. And that outline tells us this: Chaplin's early life in the London slums could well have formed a chapter in the 1903 work by Jack London, People of the Abyss. How many here are familiar with that work by Jack London? Oh, you've got your homework cut out for you for tonight. People of the Abyss by Jack London, written about the same 1903, at the same time that Charlie Chaplin was on his way to adulthood. He was born, Chaplin, in 1889, an era during which the London Congregational Union had raised a cry of outrage with its publication of a book called The Bitter Cry, describing the wretched existence of humans in London and Liverpool who would have been happier had they never been born. If Charlie, as a boy, had never been actually homeless, it was because his otherwise saintly mother, Hannah, had so frequently, and I say this with hesitation, but it has to be done, had so frequently sold herself into prostitution to prevent the starvation of her two sons, and to keep him and his brother Sidney from utter starvation. Malnutrition may have prevented Charlie from growing beyond 5 feet 4, and he was always slight of build. The home that Hannah was able to provide for her fatherless boys was frequently an 8-foot square cubicle, complete with dirt, a broken-down cot, an upturned box for a table, and a population of large rats sufficiently vicious to deprive an unguarded infant of its fingers, toes, and face. This has happened. This is no theatrical fabrication, but a plain description of life as Charlie Chaplin, the boy, saw it all around him. Sidney, 4 years his senior, looked after him while their mother, who strove hard to be a Christian woman, was working at a profession that, coupled with alcohol and abject poverty, ultimately drove the woman out of her mind. Not a happy story. And yet there was genuine love that bound the mother to her boys, a truth that shines in his autobiography, and it is well attested in a host of sources. Hannah was a singer and a stage performer of mediocre ability, from whom Charlie as a child learned the rudiments of singing and dancing, to the applause of crowds that would shower him with coins. It was this that told the mother that her son had a talent that should be developed. She agreed, albeit with regret, that her young teenager, Charlie, go with a traveling company of stage performers, the Lancashire Lads, knowing that its leader was a Christian gentleman who would watch over him. It was probably at this time that Charlie, with his devoted brother, who was to remain with him throughout, looking after his interests, began to feel the shackles loosen that had from his earliest days bound him to the big city at its worst. As he polished his mastery of a career on the stage, the sun that could never penetrate the noxious vapors of the ghetto began to brighten his future with some promise. His experience with a prison called poverty will go far to explain his later determination to translate his talents into cash. It took money, and a lot of it, to break free and to join the big society of the big city at its best. That his character remained faulted by the scars of his childhood and youth is plain to see. In his adult years, Charlie was not always lovable. To many, he was not even likable. But that he emerged from his early environment without having been more deeply scarred is something close to a miracle. And for that, he can thank the sacrifices of his dear mother, Hannah. I thought I'd pass that on to you tonight before we continue with the kind of hilarity for which this meeting is going to be made famous, I'm sure, in the next few minutes. My pleasure.
Donald Parkhurst, everybody. Donald Parkhurst.
Thank you, Charlie.